Welcome back. It's Low Bitrate episode 3. We got another 5 new releases that we have not discussed with each other. Let's do it. Moodymann, Kenny Dixon Jr. is a legend in the house scene. He's from Detroit. He's been making music for a long time. He doesn't need me to talk him up. Let's get into it. 3, 2, 1. Hey, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like this a lot. Sinnerman is the fucking jam of the summer. That song rocks so hard.
Yeah, there's this whole thing is really, I was very pleasantly surprised by how, I mean, obviously, you know, Moodymann's whole thing and kind of the deep house world has been that he's really like funk influenced and very soul influenced. And I thought the final track, which is just a straight funk cut, was, you know, proved that not only does he have like not only does he take those influences well, but he has the compositional capabilities to like pull off those styles.
The composition of that song is awesome. I think like the kind of like half syncopated vocals in there, and the really like almost wonky kind of beat. That is really cool. And also, it's a great lesson in how you can have like really emotionally charged lyrics without getting too complicated too. It's pretty like simple lyrical matter, but it hits you.
Definitely. And I also appreciate, you know, Moodymann has always kind of been notorious for, you know, his kind of sultry, like kind of sexual vocals and lyrical themes. And I really appreciated how kind of, you know, dirty and nasty this thing gets.
Even songs like the second track, I think, is Saturday, which is like kind of benign lyrical matter, I guess, if you take it literally. Carries that kind of vibe too. I also think how heavy the snare he uses in that track is a great choice.
Absolutely, that fucking
it's so loud and fucking thuddy. And I think he like kind of cuts it out and brings it back in later a whole bunch. And every time it's just like.
It's worth mentioning that there's a couple different versions of this album. The Bandcamp version has 7 tracks. We were reviewing the LP version, which has 5. There's another edition, from what I understand, that has 9 even, including a couple of live cuts. But you know, even just the 5 songs here that run about 30 minutes, you know, there's a lot of variance and a lot of, you know, he plays with a lot of really interesting ideas. What I was most impressed by was kind of the variance in tempo. I was expecting this to be a pretty straightforward like house release that stayed around 120 BPM, but you know, seeing him drop sub 100 and
on a couple tracks,
on a couple tracks, and work on these you know, kind of more you know, grooving like hip hop esque tempos. Was really interesting. Other things that I really liked about this, I'll Provide in particular, the opening track.
Great.
Really excellent.
The sample in that, the strings.
Yep.
That's so nice.
And what I really loved about that was the distorted guitars that come in low in the mix that give it kind of an almost like industrial techno kind of tinge to it. Really interesting. Really, I don't know. It's not like so far afield from anything that he's done that, you know, it's like, you know, revelatory or anything. But I mean, it's beyond competent. It's a really fantastic, brief, extremely well executed and tight house record. I really don't have a lot of complaints about it.
Yeah, the only reason I knocked off a couple points is I think the third and fourth track are a little bit kind of basic and bland comparatively to the rest of it. But also, I think if you're approaching this with a little more background of the genre than I have, that you might be able to find something really interesting in those as well.
If you're looking for some seductive, sultry, smooth, moody music to cool you down this summer, this is definitely one to check out, particularly if you're really into house like I am. You're just... 100 Gecs. 1,000 Gecs. A million Gecs. A billion Gecs. 100 Gecs is a duo consisting of Laura Les and Dylan Brady. 1,000 Gecs is their debut album, and it's something. Let's talk about it. 3, 2, 1.
What you got? 7. That's about what I...
That was actually also about what I expected from you. Despite the fact that I think Henry gave it a 5, it is so notable and strange and kind of unlike a lot of other things that are coming out that I think it's still worth talking about the 2 months after it's been released, regardless of whatever your like intricate feelings on the album may be. It's weird. It's a really weird one. And in a kind of Gen Z internet sort of way.
So here's where the 5 comes from. I don't think this album's weird enough, honestly.
Really?
I don't think it commits hard enough to any one thing for me to really get excited about it. Because half the reviews I was seeing about this were that it's like really fucking obnoxious and annoying, and I didn't even get that out of it. I think it like doesn't have the excess that I would want to hear from like a parody, and it doesn't have like the songwriting that I would want to hear from like an homage kind of thing. And most of the time, it just kind of lands as boring to me. Like, say what you will about like a Mr. Bungle, but at least when they do the like genre swappy kind of shit, you can tell that they're like putting the time into each of their little like 20-second sections of shit for that 20-second section to be interesting on its own. But most of these like the metal sections and the dubstep sections just feel like bland and boring, and it's not exciting enough for me just to have that part in the song.
You threw me so hard by bringing up Mr. Bungle, who are a band that I at one point in my life really liked, but at some point a switch flipped for me where I found Mr. Bungle and Mike Patton's kind of broader discography to be really like cloying and pretentious. And I think the biggest strength of 1,000 Gecs lies in its lack of pretension. It's very, in spite of all of its, thematic excess, it is a very sincere album, and I think it's born of a sincere love and appreciation for the kinds of genres that it's pulling inspiration from, which I think is what I connect with so much about it. It definitely, regardless of your, personal feelings about the, compositional quality of the dubstep section, I don't get the sense that it was thrown in, as, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we put a dubstep section in? I'm having a little bit of a disconnect because the genre changes, to me, all read as interesting and engaging and I think compositionally fleshed out. My problem with this album, and what makes me deduct a couple of points from its score, is that generally speaking, I find some of the lyrical content to be a little grating, and I think occasionally some of the... You better
not tell me you don't like Ringtone.
I don't like Ringtone.
Fuck no, that's the best song on the album.
Somehow I knew that you were going to like that one the most.
That was the best. That one has really good composition. I think that thing they do with bringing in the distortion and fucking around with the effects in there is really exciting and is the kind of thing that I would want to hear from an album that's trying to have that sort of like honest homage quality to all those genres that you just brought up.
And that was the one that read as the most,
Money Machine too, by the way. That one also I get the same vibe from.
Money Machine, the bop. It's the victim of some kind of internet irony poisoning a little bit, to an extent lyrically, which is what sort of creates a disconnect for me with the compositional content of the album. I don't know, I'm just overhearing the word piss baby in 2019. I debated even giving it a lower score because there are so many moments where I really find myself getting into it and then something will come up and I'll just be I really love Stupid Horse. I like that it's an exploration of ska, and I think it does it relatively well, but the chorus doesn't work for me.
That song sounds like it should be in a YouTube playlist with the Duck song. And have a flash animation with it. That's all I hear when I hear that song.
Yeah, but to me that's so, and I think part of it is I guess I don't know how old Dylan and Laura are. From what I understand, they're a little younger than us. And the degree to which, generational changes are speeding up, there's a world of difference between 24-year-olds and 20-year-olds as far as, the kinds of things and the kinds of, cultural detritus that they pick up and are influenced by. Mm. And so I almost kind of like the idea of a band and an album that is influenced by novelty flash songs a little bit. Like that to me, I guess I can't help but be, endeared toward that a little bit.
I mean, I'm optimistic for what I think they can do in the future. because I think that the thematic elements and sort of whole aesthetic and atmosphere around it is intellectually interesting. I just don't think the songwriting's there yet. That's about it.
Me too. Titus Andronicus are a New Jersey-based punk band, and they put out a bunch of albums. Some of them you might even consider classics. So let's jump right into it.
3, 2, 1.
Oh,
God,
no!
Really? I thought this was awful.
Oh no!
Oh my god, I thought this was terrible. Every
Oh.
song is just some generic blues riff and just terrible vocals about being a trouble man.
Tisk.
Oh my god,
Tisk.
I can't believe you liked it that much. I thought we were both just gonna riff on this one for 10 minutes.
Nope. I liked it a little
Holy
bit.
fuck.
I didn't like it a lot.
What about those two like straight blues tracks?
Yeah, look. Okay, yeah, the middle.
Those were agony.
Agony is a big
agony
stretch.
with a tacked on like Dropkick Murphys. Like
the bagpipe guitar solo ripped.
No way!
Yes, it did.
Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
it did. No, it was
no
baller.
chance. That was the most
super
basic thing ever. They could have even executed that idea better.
I don't want to say that you're a fucking idiot because I don't love this album, but here's what I'll say. I'm a huge Titus Andronicus fan.
Blam's aside.
Yeah, okay, alright. I like Titus Andronicus a lot. I think that they have always kind of trafficked very clearly in being influenced by the Springsteens and the Clash and bands like that of the world. This is a terrible entry point into their discography.
I know, because I've never listened to a full album of theirs, but I've heard songs that you've showed me that I liked a lot.
Yeah.
So I was pretty disappointed with this one.
It's a really, really bad entry point into what is an otherwise very rich, interesting, and varied, take on the kind of heartland rock sound. Which is unfortunate because, for somebody like me who is a longtime fan of this band, I've been into them since like my freshman year of high school when some kid showed me the Monitor. He was really into Pitchfork. It was a classic 2010 moment. I've just always found the Patrick Stickles' voice to be really engaging.
That is the best part of the album, is his voice, hands down. It's the only part that I don't want to critique at all, because I think it's unique and really solid and really cool. It does evoke sort of like a rootsy kind of feel to it that I'm into.
He really, as a frontman, he really has that je ne sais quoi that the Springsteens and Neil Youngs of the world that he's so influenced by, evoke. And I think that's his biggest strength as a songwriter, and what allows me to return to an album like this and hear songs with lyrics that are so, obvious and on the nose, as on I Blame Society. While I can understand, I feel like almost, having listened to this band for so many years and been so engaged with their work that I've almost kind of charted like Stickles' emotional trajectory over the last couple of years, like seeing him kind of, tackle these big picture, themes of, loneliness and isolation and depression and whatever, through the Civil War on the Monitor was like an amazing, literary device, and then for him to do a sort of fucked up-esque like rock opera on The Most Lamentable Tragedy, more straightforward kind of rock on Local Business. All of those things, work really well for me, and so it's hard for me not to hear a lot of the lyrical content and think of it as extensions of the previous work. Obviously, as somebody who is not familiar with any of that, coming in and hearing fucking I Blame Society, like
I don't even think that's the worst one. I also think that I used to be a problem child, now I'm a trouble man. It's awful.
In terms of like people who are able to like interrogate the condition of like the alienated young man in the 2000s and beyond, I think few people do it better than he does.
We've been talking about the lyrics just because I think that's the most cartoonishly bad part of the album and the easiest and most obvious part for me to make fun of.
Sure.
But the thing that I dislike the least is all the riffage on this is so fucking boring and basic. It's just a bunch of like early 2000s like blues rock shit.
It's not even early 2000s blues rock, it's 70s blues rock.
No, it's not even that.
You know?
It's like glossed up, fakey early 2000s blues blues rock.
It's so hard because if it were any other band, I would probably be ruthlessly critiquing this like right alongside you. But for whatever reason, and it has to be an entirely subjective thing of me just really like caring about this band and like appreciating their other work so much. It's so hard for me to be like, yeah, fuck this, because like all these things that you're saying are probably objectively true, but I'm like, yeah, but you didn't even hear My Eating Disorder, like you didn't even heard The Monitor, you idiot. Tumult Around the World is a great song.
That one's alright, and I think Beneath the Boot has cool lyrics. I like the picking bugs out of your skin kind of imagery on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
and the solos are really bad too. Don't tell me you like those solos.
I really like that bagpipe. I really quite like it. I'm really, honestly, I'm really all about bands returning to and taking stylistic influence from the Pogues. In truth, I'm probably not going to return to it much past this because there's other and better Titus albums that you could be listening to. But if you are, like myself, a longtime fan or just interested in seeing what Patty Stax is up to, maybe check it out. But if you're looking to enter into the Titus discography, avoid this and the previous album.
Or you'll end up like me.
Or you'll end up like Henry.
Mannequin Pussy has been around for about a decade now. They've been putting out some albums that have been getting hype for a while. They make punk music. Let's see if this album gets hype from us. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I was even considering a 9 on this. Jesus. I think this album is full of jams, and I think it's a shame that they're getting rolled into the ball of like overhyped pitchfork core bands, because I think they know how to write a good rock song, they know how to do good lyrics, and this is great music to blast in your car as you drive around when it's 95 out.
For me, this is a slight to moderate step down from their previous outing, Romantic, which is a favorite of mine. Not like an all-time favorite necessarily, but one that I return to pretty frequently. And I think the biggest detriment to Patience as opposed to the previous album for me is the lack of more hardcore influence moments. There's really only one track on Patience that really goes for it quite the way that they did with a lot higher degree of frequency on Romantic, and I really missed that. I thought that was, as far as a band, that's their greatest strength for me.
I believe it, because most of the criticism I've been seeing of this album is that it's not as hard as it used to be, and this is my first album of theirs that I've ever gone through, and I can say as someone who's had that exact thought about hundreds of bands that I might even think that if I had been coming to them with more of a history with their backlog too. But I think my favorite songs on this are actually the slower songs, like Drunk 2 and High Horse and Who You Are, although the hardcore stuff is good too.
I think, and I agree with that too, because I essentially had the same thought that I really appreciated their tendency to get a little slower and more contemplative on this one, which is something that they certainly did to an extent on Romantic, but here it's a little bit more pronounced. But that said, what I liked so much about Romantic was the kind of jarring transitions between styles. Your opening track is a hardcore pummeler, and then you get an almost early 2000s kind of slack rock indie vibe immediately following that, and it just kind of continues to go all over the place from there. This one, while certainly, verging on, while certainly, embracing consistency to a higher degree, loses a little bit of that spontaneity that I really appreciated about their previous work.
I'm just in it for the hooks, basically. I think this album has tons of great hooks.
There's definitely tons of great hooks, and they are really competent songwriters, and more than competent songwriters, they're very good songwriters. And I think the production is, perfectly tasteful for this kind of thing. It really just, does what good production needs to do. Everything's very clear. It's bright. It's it's a good album. And when I give it a 6, I'm not giving it like a dismissive 6. Like, yeah, it's good.
Boring.
It's because they're a band that I really have connected with and really enjoyed in the past. And for 3 years between albums, I guess my hopes were a little high for this one. None of this is to say that, you know, I think that they've in any way lost something, you know, as a band. I think, you know, songwriting wise, everything is still there. All the elements are really good. The one track in particular, FUCAW, the penultimate track, is, you know, one of my favorites of theirs.
The backing vocals at the end of that track.
Yeah,
that's
really
so cool. And the way it flows between that track and Clams, I think, is really cool.
I hope that they will in someday return to a little bit more of the sharper, edgier, kind of more menacing stuff that I've heard from them in the past. But that's not to say that this is in any way a bad album. I would even still recommend it to fans who have you know, enjoyed their previous work. And unlike Titus Andronicus, I think this could be a lovely entry point into their discography.
Schlagenheim is an album by the Scottish four-piece Black Midi. It's getting a lot of attention. They have a lot of noise rock influence. They have some math rock influence. They have some metal influence. It's pretty cool. It's pretty out there. Pretty interesting. Let's see what we thought. 3, 2, 1. Damn! Holy fuck!
I fucking hated this.
I did not expect that low.
Really profoundly did not like this album.
Even the like 3 middle tracks, because here's my thing. If you took out those 3 middle tracks, near DTMI through of Schlagenheim, I'll be all over this. I think those 3 tracks, if that was like a little EP, I would give that probably like a 7 or an 8. But every other track is bad.
I genuinely do not know that there was a song I liked on
Not
this.
even near DTMI?
Nope.
That one's just like a straightforward rock song though.
Nope.
We gotta talk about the elephant in the room though, which is, why the fuck are you doing that with your voice?
Why are you doing that?
Why are you doing that? Knock it off!
I don't want...
Your regular vocals are fine.
Yeah, Scottish Chris Cornell is not what I want in my fucking noisy math rock band.
I don't want to hear you smacking your lips and making all those like click-clacky noises. The last track on this Ductor is like unlistenable. With all that kind of shit in it.
The only track that is more unlistenable than that track is BMBMBM.
Yes, that was the other fucking terrible
It's
one.
5 minutes of just having your fucking ears drilled. It's awful. I don't get it. The vocals suck. The compositions are way too long.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
some of these tracks are, you know, pushing 8 minutes. No fucking reason for it. Doesn't need to happen. The production is nothing special. And what's most frustrating about it to me is that there are really inspired moments on here.
Yeah, definitely.
There's you know, some really nice, like, kind of jerky, like, funk, like James Chancey kind of funk going on through some of these that I really appreciate. There's 3 vocalists from what I understand. The other vocalists are pretty decent. But Jesus goddamn Christ, for every good thing that happens on this album, there's something that just completely like raises my hackles and perturbs me.
Yeah, I'm about the same. I just think I gave it a more positive than negative score just on the strength of those 3 middle tracks, because they're some of the longer tracks too, except for Near DTMI. And I think those ones have the smallest amount of the weird fucking like 70s Italian prog guy voice that he's obviously putting on. And I also think compositionally those ones do a pretty good job of keeping the like obviously just like jerking around to show off how mathy and proggy you are kind of shit that shows up in the other tracks to a minimum. And I think they are still mostly concerned with writing like catchy stuff, which is what I think they're the best at. I think these guys to me just sound like a more straightforward rock band that is trying way too hard to do some experimental shit.
This is just really unsuccessful for me in pretty much everything that it's trying to do. Lyrically, it's grating. It's, you know, instrumentally, you're 100% correct that it's nothing but flexing. It's
not even good flexing.
It's not
like, there's not even anything on this that's that really technically that impressive.
Yeah, truly. And even really compositionally that impressive. Like, I don't need anything to be like insanely noodly, you know, like my math rock doesn't need to be like totally outrageous, but like we're not even getting anything super interesting when they're playing outside of like typical time signatures or like, I don't know, there's just nothing really going on here.
If you like this album, that's good for you.
If you like the album, fine.
Yeah.
Explain to me why. Because I just don't fucking get it.
Like always, we got a couple of quick recommendations of shit that we've been engaging with this week that we really liked. This artist, Stargirl, put out an album, RNBW, in 2015 that I'm bringing up because I think they grapple with stereotypes of pop music in a way more interesting way than 100 Gecs does. And I think that if you were disappointed by 100 Gecs like I was, you should check this out. It's way simpler, but I think it gets the job done way better. I have also this week been rewatching some of the first couple seasons of Lucha Underground, and I think that if you're already a fan of wrestling, you probably have already heard of and maybe watched Lucha Underground. But I was realizing as I was watching it that if you're looking to get into wrestling, I think this is a great starting point. It's a short show. It's produced by Robert Rodriguez, so it still has a lot of like glossy traditional TV elements in it that you don't need to be like a hardcore technical wrestling fan to understand. Just ate some dirt somewhere.
Nice.
I don't know, I just bit and dirt in my mouth.
Ew. This week I made a big life decision and bought myself a gaming PC, which I haven't had in a while, and I've really been missing playing video games. So I've been delving into quite a bit. The two that I have been full bore obsessed with this week are Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon. I'm sure you've been hearing about it. Spiritual successor to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It has a really nice, what I've been describing to people as a super high detail, like PSP aesthetic to it. Really fantastic. Some, localization issues and some things like that, but as far as, a worthy successor to Symphony of the Night, a game that I still have not beaten, you can't really go wrong. And I have also been full-on obsessed with House Flipper, a sim game where you essentially purchase houses, clean them up, repaint them, add, installations and furniture and shit like that, and then sell it to the highest bidder. And it is truly the perfect game for listening to albums and doing this kind of thing, because it's pretty mindless and really nice. It fires on the same cylinders that like clicker games do for me. And finally, music-wise, I have really been enjoying the latest from $75 Bill, an experimental duo now expanded to be, a whole bunch of members with a lot of variants and instrumentation. Their latest album, I Was Real, recently was released, I think, right around the beginning of this month. And it plays on a lot of themes that artists like Bill Orcutt and the Dead Sea have, played with as far as experimental rock goes. It reminds me of something that would have been put out on Mego in like the early 2000s. Tons of really excellent, long, jammy, interesting experimental rock for you to dig into. Would highly recommend. Thanks so much for watching.
That's all we got.
That's all we got. Bye.